Saying give thanks and praise to the Lord, and I will feel alright. Going from Africa, to America.
There is a saying that if you know your history, then you will know where you're coming from, and then journeying into the future becomes comprehensible. The black race has been brainwashed into believing that it is worthless and helpless. We have forfeited our way of life and tend to believe that living the Western way is the best. The Western media is accused of presenting Africa as uncivilized, hunger-stricken, and war-torn continent to the rest of the world, and as a result has made the African or the black race home and abroad lose confidence in themselves. Founder of African Conscious Study Group, Dr. Maulana Hamed, in lecturing some university students, linked Africa's problems to the kind of educational system brought by the European colonial masters, and said it was to de-Africanize the African's mind, spirit. Sarah Abnaward of the University of Texas and Emanuela Bendanyansa of the School of Hotel, Restaurant and Tourism Management shared their thoughts about Africa.
Growing up in the U.S., of course, we don't really get a lot of positive images about Africa. So as a very young child, I mostly had negative images. But as I got older, I was always interested, so I made it my mission just to research myself and to learn more about the African culture.
Today we see one another as different sets of people. Like you can see the Hausa man, the Kanuri, the Ewe, the Akan, or the Gan as different people. In those old days, long ago, which we call prehistoric days, all these people were one. They were united. Even Christian and Muslim religions confirm that time immemorial, people all over the world now, at that time, concentrated on one point in a place in Asia where Iraq now exists. That is a confluence of two great rivers, the Tigris, people call it Tigris, and the Euphrates, where they meet here at a place we call Aja or Hope. The tree calls it differently, the Ga calls it differently, the Hausa calls it differently, but the Ewe call it Aja.
I will press for this consciousness of our race and our people, because we all have generational kind of existence. Those who started the movement long ago are gone, and unless each generation continues and takes it up, at some point, it will be left in midstream. So I'm glad that we are rallying around, reminding ourselves of our common heritage and also of the strength of this heritage in terms of what we can achieve when we use our heritage in positive ways in this contemporary world in which we are.
When you talk of the beginning of this world, you have to go back to Nubia, Egypt, where everybody has accepted that civilization from religion, philosophy, astronomy, science, culture has originated in the ancient Egyptian tongue, referring to the beginning of this world. It was also a Ga tongue as Jene Shishin. The term Jene Shishin meaning the beginning of the world. Jene Shishin, as the Greeks who have documented that they were taught by the Nubians of the Nile Valley in Egypt, corrupted the term to be Genesis. This Genesis today from our King James Version refer to the term Genesis, speaking of the beginning of this world. For we, the Ghana people, our history dates back some thousands of years back, which traces our ancestry to the Nile River. The word term Ga itself means first, oldest or eldest. And the Ga word is connected with the name Ganumbi. In the Ga language, the Gans have referred to water as Nu, and Bi means children. So the word Numbi, meaning the children out of water children, that name was what was later derived for the word Nubian, as Nubians. And we know that in ancient history, from the facts of civilization, the Nubians are known to be the first known existing race on this planet. And for the Ghana people, we have a term that we used to say that Wajeshong, meaning we have come from afar. And our ancestors have settled along the Nile River, which later became known as the Nile.
You remember the incident that took place, the wall of Jericho that fell. Along the line, 7 priests were commanded to blow their horns ahead of the Ark of the Covenant. 7 times they went around the wall. From this experience, when you come to the Ghanaian traditional society, the king is also carried in palanquin, and in front of him are 7 horn blowing. This is no coincidence. It's a continuation of our culture that we carried all the way from Israel. Linguistically too, there are similar sounding words in our dialect and the Hebrew language. It is beautiful. In Akan we say Efe. In Hebrew it's Yafe. And in Ghana, Efo. In the same way, welcome in Hebrew we say Burukaba. And then in the other language, the Akan and other languages we say Akwaba. Then we say I'm coming. In Hebrew it is Aniba. And then in Akan, Neba. In Ghana, Nimba.
Master Tita Mulana, how sure are you that the blacks of the past who developed all those civilizations are the present day Africans?
Well, young man, Lamote, there are volumes of information about the migration. I would like to take a moment here, if I may, to go to this map. Here, first of all, I want to clarify. I'm using some of the works of Dr. Sheikh Anta Diop, the late, great Dr. Diop. The Ghanaian researchers, the late J.B. Dankwa. The late J.B. Dankwa, in his book, The Arkans, page 8, he showed that the Arkans came from the Great Lakes area, which is called Kush, and they migrated into the Nile Valley. We have Kwajo Asante. He also talks about the Ashanti coming out of Egypt. Then we have Charles Mamata of the Airways, showing that the Airways were in Israel. We have also the works showing that the Ga Adambe were in ancient Canaan or Israel. The first empire after the fall of ancient Egypt, we witnessed Old Ghana as early as 50 BC. The Romans, under General Septimus Flaccus, in 50 BC, under Caesar's request, was trying to search for the Niger Basin. They found Old Ghana. Old Ghana reigned from 50 BC to 1076 AD. Some of the ethnic groups that were in Old Ghana were the Arkans, were the Ga Adambe, were the Airways. Now, there were Yorubas and Nigerian groups there, but for this particular purpose I'm illustrating, I won't mention those groups, but they were there. Then after Old Ghana was burned to the ground in 1076 AD area. So after Old Ghana fell, our forebears went deeper toward the south, and they established Old Mali. That was in 1230 AD until about 1390. The Moroccans, Arabs, and Europeans came again out of jealousy, burned Timbuktu and Old Mali Empire to ground. Then from there, our forebears went deeper and they established Songhai from 1464 to 1592. The capital city was Jimmy. One of the oldest mosques in the world was housed in this particular area. The Arabs came again through Morocco and with the Europeans with rifles and muskets, and they burned it to the ground. So from there, our forebears fled deep into the forest, and it was from there we began to set up Iliefe, Oyo, Dahomey, Ashanti kingdoms, getting into the area of about the 1700s. Let me mark one thing. When Don Diego Azambuja came to Efutu and Shama, they logged in their diary that the Arkans were still coming down from Old Ghana and Old Mali through the Kong Mountains of Cote d'Ivoire. So we know that the Arkans, and one of the first groups of the Arkans who came down from that area were the Fanti, and they settled around Makasim. You understand me? So the ethnography shows the connection between sub-Saharan ethnic groups and those that were in ancient Egypt.
At the collapse of the Songhai Empire, those perceived to be Akans continued their migration southwards through present-day Burkina Faso into the present territories of Ghana, where they also continued with their migration. Then the Igbos, the Yorubas, the Eves, and the Ga went along the Niger River until they arrived at Benin, where the Igbos and the Yorubas also remained and started their internal migration in that land. And the Eves and the Gans continued from there through the whole now Benin, Togo, until they also arrived at the present location in Ghana. Biblical history and anthropology show that many West Africans, including the Gans, the Akans, the Yorubas, the Igbos, the Wolofs, the Fulanis, have strong Hebrewism identified with their culture. Hebrewism is the culture that came in the form of the laws of God as recorded in the first 5 books of Moses. Along the line, we came with chieftaincy. Chieftaincy, which today many people are saying that is not relevant, it comes all the way from Israel.
Chapter 13, verses 14 and 15 says, sons and daughters of Abraham will be put into bondage, 400 years of bondage, and at the end of the bondage, they will come out victorious with great riches. Oh. Very, very interesting here that sons and daughters of Abraham will be in bondage of 400 years. Now, comparatively to the discussions we've had over the weeks or over the months, I would say there seems to be some kind of link.
In the Genesis chapter 15, verses 13 and 14, know for a surety, Abraham, that your seed will go into bondage, be kidnapped, taken to a foreign land, spend 400 years in that land. But know in the next verse, 15, 13, 14, that I, God Almighty, will judge the people who enslave my children. And those children, they will come out with great substance and riches from the world that they have served. and they will return back to their motherland. And it is that entity that is supposed to revitalize, rejuvenate the continent, and move us forward. So they're talking about African people in the Bible.
In 2007, the government of Ghana, under the auspices of the Ministry of Tourism, acknowledged the Bible prophecy of the African slave descendants taken to the Americas by establishing the Joseph Project to reach out to those Africans in the diaspora.
Biggest lie that has ever been told is the enslavement of the so-called Jews in ancient Egypt, the exodus out of ancient Egypt, and being the chosen people of God. Please view the following truth done by European archaeologists and historians in the Sinai desert of Egypt.
Analysis here. Unlike Ramesses' statue, you can't actually find any archaeological evidence that the exodus ever took place. In a country where thousands upon thousands of documents have survived, that is very extraordinary. There is not a hint of Israel and Egypt in the ancient texts, nor of the biblical Exodus. In fact, Exodus never took place in history as the Bible describes it.
In furtherance of unveiling this truth about the big lie, recently in the newspaper of the Dallas Morning News, over the internet, dallasnews.com, Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas, USA, April 8, 2002. They ran the following story. Quote, "The story of the Exodus did not happen the way the Bible depicts it, if it happened at all," says Rabbi David Wope, senior rabbi at Los Angeles Sinai Temple. As Rabbi Wope pointed out, nearly 100 years of excavations have yielded no conclusive evidence that the Israelites were ever slaves, lived in Egypt, or wandered in the wilderness for 40 years. Nor is there proof that they conquered Canaan with Joshua as their leader.
No exodus whatsoever. In fact, European Ashkenazi Jews say it themselves. This is from Globe Mail, Toronto, Canada. Thursday, 18th February 1988. Evidence from the Sinai, biblical Exodus, a myth, archaeologists suggest. Evidence from the recent excavations in the Sinai desert indicate there was no exodus by the Jews from Egypt, and Israeli archaeologists said. Elijah Oren, a Ben Gurion University professor,
The main purpose of the Exodus story was not to describe history. The main purpose of the Exodus story, as it was created by the pre-scribes who lived in Jerusalem, was to glorify their God and to make their God look greater than any other God. And what they used was a series of old legends and distorted memories which they put together to create this story which has no relationship to history.
There's been 100 years of archaeological analysis and investigation in the desert of the Sinai to see if the Israelites exodus out of Egypt. In fact, there is absolutely not one record in all of the papyrus and records of Egypt. And Egypt was an extremely tedious record-keeping people. There's not one record to show evidence that there was any white people or any so-called Israelites enslaved in Egypt proper.
Okay, so...
But there is record, according to the United Nations Conference Against Racism. It states for a fact, UNESCO states in a summary conference in 1978 that the Africans are the only people in the last 6,000 years that were kidnapped from their motherland, taken to a foreign land, spent over 400 years in bondage.
The master teacher explains the historical importance of Ghana during the period of...
Ghanaians were taken from their mother womb. Here, there were 66 slave forts at the peak of slavery. Ghana had 46 of the whole 66. 6 between Senegal, what they call Upper Guinea, down to Angola, which they call Lower Guinea. There were 66. The Gold Coast, Ghana had 46 of the 66.
The evidence is there. The real children of Israel are in the ghettos of the United States of America, in Jamaica, in the Caribbean, and right here in Ghana. Africans. And that's what the Bible is talking about.